I am an inheritor of one of the oldest cultures in the world, a culture which subscribed to strong kinship ties and strong spiritual connection to the land. Currently, records show that I'm the first qualified Aboriginal school teacher in Australia. Now, how did this come about? I always thought there was divine intervention. How does a little black girl who lives with her destitute family in a shack on the riverbank in New South Wales end up being Senior Australian of the Year for Queensland? Over 200 years ago, Aboriginal people have faced terrible and sudden crises in their lives. Loss of land, loss of culture, loss of identity, and loss of autonomy. They entered into the culture of silence of the dispossessed. What did this mean? We became a people without a voice, victims of government policies, racism, injustice. The key to unlocking the silence was education. The breakthrough to literacy brought empowerment for Aboriginal people. Today, my beautiful granddaughter is confident and free to make choices about her life. She, like many young people of Aboriginal heritage, would find it hard to imagine the almost impossible challenges that faced the Aboriginal trailblazers, who through their efforts made life easy for following generations. My mother was left to fend for her 4 children on her own. My mother toiled at menial tasks for a pittance. It was barely enough to keep us fed, but we managed to survive. She was lucky to have had a good education at that time. She wanted a better life for me. She encouraged me to be educated. Although Aboriginal children generally were not allowed in white schools, I was lucky enough to attend one. At first, I was placed in a slow learners class because it was assumed that Aboriginal children were not intelligent, and it was thought education was wasted on Aboriginal people. However, I was a bright child and often finished a day's work in half an hour. I always wanted to be a teacher. My dream came true in 1950 when the Anglican Church sponsored me to train at Sydney Teachers College. My first teaching position was at Yarrabah, an Aboriginal community school in North Queensland, for 2 years, then 3 years in the Torres Strait. When I returned to Sydney in the late 1950s, I became the first Aboriginal teacher to front a white class. My family was proud of me. I had a successful and well-respected job. However, I was always reminded that I was an Aborigine. The 1967 referendum laid the groundwork for change. The majority of Australians agreed that Aborigines should be recognised as Australian citizens. Affirmative action was needed to alleviate the deprivation and poverty. My thirst for knowledge has continued throughout my life. I am the first person to write a detailed study on shame in the Aboriginal context for my honours thesis, and now I am the first person to write a detailed study of Aboriginal humour for my PhD thesis. I hope to be a recognised Aboriginal scholar in a mentoring and examining role for others. Education has given Aboriginal people a voice and empowerment. But best of all, we have the ability to make choices and decisions about our lives. Equity of opportunity and empowerment are precious and a basic human right, not a privilege.